Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 9 Part 12 based on novel. So let's start. Upon hearing these words from Lin Dong, a faint smile also appeared on Ji Yu Yang's face. She had deeply experienced Lin Dong's character. If the chaotic tower was not able to move him, there's probably no hope of things going through. However, it was fortunate that his stubbornness had not reached abnormal levels yet. The chaotic tower is protected by the collaboration efforts of the 5 great clans. It opens once every year, and there are only 3 quotas to enter. The champion clan of the martial gathering will be the one to obtain these 3 quotas. 3. Lin Dong's brows faintly wrinkled. It was obvious that he never imagined that the quotas would be so rare. Furthermore, it was indeed within his expectations that the Great Desolation Bead had a connection with the so-called martial gathering. If Brother Lin Dong is able to help our GU clan obtain the champion position in this martial gathering, I'll persuade our clan to give you one of the 3 quotas. How's that? GU Yang asked. Lin Dong frowned as he mumbled to himself and calmly pondered about it. He did not wish to participate in matters related to the benefits and grudges between these great clans. However, due to the stone talisman within his body, there was no choice but for him to give this matter some consideration. Although Lin Dong had yet to experience any heaven-defying abilities of the stone talisman that were worthy of its reputation, he knew that this object would surely become a great aid to him in the future. Naturally, all of this was on the premise that he had found a way to awaken the mysterious stone talisman. Lin Dong had pondered on this for quite a long time before, however, there was no progress at all. The mysterious stone talisman was too mysterious, and with his current capabilities, he was simply unable to help it recover. This was why he could not help but become secretly excited when he felt a request from the mysterious stone talisman for the first time. After all, this was the first time such an opportunity had presented itself. Damn it! Lin Dong's gaze flickered. It was a long while later before he finally firmly gritted his teeth. The experts in chaotic demon sea were as many as clouds in the sky, and it was also much more chaotic when compared with the Eastern Xian region. Lin Dong still planned on searching for the second ancestral symbol here. If he found it, a bitter battle would likely occur. Such a great battle would not be the same as the previous ones he had experienced. The allure of the ancestral symbol was sufficient to cause even those old monsters who had stepped into the profound death stage to turn a little crazy. Therefore, for the sake of being able to successfully acquire the second ancestral symbol, Lin Dong needed some kind of method to strengthen himself. And obviously, the mysterious stone talisman would be the strongest kind. If you give me a quota, I will help you. After making his decision, Lin Dong did not hesitate any further. He raised his head and smiled at Ji Yu Yang as he gave his reply. It's a deal. Ji Yu Yang replied with a smile and nodded her head. In addition, I hope that at that time, you will help me procure a complete map of chaotic demon sea. Lin Dong added. He needed the complete map to search for the precise location of the second ancestral symbol. A complete map? Ji Yu Yang repeated while gawking. After thinking about it, she nodded her head. Although the complete map was precious and uncommon, their GU clan would be able to afford it. Although I don't know what you need a complete map for, I have to tell you in advance that the vastness of chaotic demon sea far exceeds your imagination. There are even some sea regions that have yet to be explored. Therefore, our so-called complete map only covers the explored regions. There are actually unexplored sea regions, Lin Dong muttered while his eyes narrowed. This was rather troublesome. He never would have imagined that the vastness of chaotic demon sea would actually reach such a frightening level. As for those unexplored regions, I'm afraid that only the sea demon race have explored them. Ji Yu Yang said. Sea demon race. Lin Dong was taken aback. It was obvious that this was the first time he had heard of such a race. Within chaotic demon sea, the strongest faction isn't any sect or clan, but the sea demon race. They live within the sea, and are the undeniable overlords of chaotic demon sea. Ji Yu Yang knew that this was Lin Dong's first time in chaotic demon sea, therefore she did not find it strange that he did not know such common knowledge. The relations between the factions within Chaotic Demon Sea are very complicated. There are humans, demonic beasts, sea demons. The conflicts between them are too many to list. Therefore it's much more dangerous than other areas. Naturally, although it's dangerous, such an environment is beneficial for training. If you want to become a genuine expert, one cannot avoid such experiences. Lin Dong deeply believed in this. If a person like Ji Yu Yang was placed within the younger generation of the Eastern Xian region, she would absolutely be considered as the cream of the crop. However, within the younger generation in Chaotic Demon Sea, she would at best be considered as outstanding. This did not mean that Yuan Kang, Ling Qinghu and the rest were less talented than Ji Yu Yang, but a result of the environment. Furthermore, the resources that Chaotic Demon Sea possessed were far from what the Eastern Xian region could compare to. Of course, this also did not mean that the super sects of the Eastern Xian region were weaker. If the Yuan Gate, Dao sect and the rest were to be placed within Chaotic Demon Sea, they would definitely be overlord-like existences like the Demonic Wind Cave and the Universe Cave. No matter what, from a certain perspective, the underlying foundation of those super sects were more suitable for the smooth handing down of inheritances, as compared to an unstable environment like Chaotic Demon Sea. Since you've accepted, let us leave immediately. We've already been delayed here for over a month, and there is only half a month left before the martial gathering. As for the information about the other 4 great clans and the martial gathering, I'll give an in-depth explanation along the way. Ji Yu Yang said. The surrounding Ji Yu clan disciples nodded their heads in excitement. They had seen how tyrannical Lin Dong was, and were naturally happy at being able to secure such a strong external helper. Thinking about it, their Ji Yu clan should be able to give a good showing in this martial gathering. Lin Dong did not object, and nodded his head. Upon seeing this, the surrounding Ji Yu clan disciples immediately scattered and started packing up the camp in preparation to leave Mysterious Spirit Island. Lin Dong remained where he was and watched the now busy crowd, before softly breathing out a mouthful of air. He had his own agenda for agreeing to participate in the 5 clans martial gathering. When the 3 brothers had entered the spatial teleportation back then, Ren Yuan's final attack had disturbed the formation. Therefore, Lin Dong did not know where his 2 brothers, Little Martin and Little Flame currently were, or whether they were safe. Therefore, while searching for the second ancestral symbol, Lin Dong also needed to find the both of them. However, due to the vastness of Chaotic Demon Sea, trying to find 2 people was even harder than searching for a needle in a haystack. From the looks of it, the 5 clans martial gathering should be rather famous. If he were to participate, he should be able to spread his name around. At that time, if Little Martin or Little Flame heard about it, they would have information about him, and would be able to subsequently join up with him. I hope they are safe and sound. Lin Dong muttered under his breath, before tilting his head, as his gaze turned towards the distant east in an ambiguous manner, and the fists within the sleeves slowly started to tighten. Old dogs of the Yuan Gate. I've said this before, when I, Lin Dong, return to the Eastern Xian region, it will be the end of your Yuan Gate. Therefore, wash your necks and wait. Lin Dong tightly pursed his lips. Scarlet red flashed past his eyes, as chilling murderous intent filled them. At a corner of Mysterious Spirit Island, a giant 100-feet-long scarlet red ship was parked. The surface of the ship was covered in scarlet red steel sheets, which made it look extremely strong and resilient. On the sail of the giant ship was a gigantic insignia of the Ji Yu clan that fluttered in the wind. Obviously, this giant ship should be the vessel that Ji Yu Yang and the rest had arrived in. Chaotic Demon Sea was so vast that it was nearly endless. Within the seas, the weather was unpredictable and a disaster could happen at any time. Therefore, other than those experts with rather tyrannical strength, most people would gladly rely on strong and resilient giant ships that were specially built to travel in these seas. Several Ji Yu clan disciples were left to defend the Ji Yu clan ship. Therefore, when Lin Dong followed Ji Yu Yang and the rest and boarded the ship, he attracted some puzzled gazes. Miss Ji Yu Yang. A grey-robed elder swiftly came forward and welcomed Ji Yu Yang, before respectfully cupping his fists together. Uncle Qin, let's start the ship and head to Martial Gathering Island. Ji Yu Yang nodded towards him before instructing. Yes. The grey-robed elder nodded his head. However, those clearly shrewd eyes turned towards Lin Dong, who was standing behind Ji Yu Yang. "He's the external helper we've invited for this martial gathering, Lin Dong," Ji Yu Yang said with a smile. "Oh." The grey-robed elder was taken aback, as his gaze swept peculiarly across Lin Dong's body, and his mouth moved, but he did not say anything. However, his expression had turned slightly weird. Upon seeing this appearance, Lin Dong faintly smiled, before retreating towards the side of the boat. Gazing at the flat surface of the sea in the distance, the vast and endless sea slightly affected his mood. "Miss, did you invite this little brother as an external helper after hearing that young Master Yunqian has suffered serious injuries?" Seeing Lin Dong walk away, the grey-robed elder asked Ji Yu Yang in a low voice. "Yes?" Ji Yu Yang faintly nodded her head, before her black brows wrinkled slightly. She proceeded to ask, "What is it?" "According to the news that I've received 2 days ago, our Ji clan has also invited an external helper. You should recognize him. He's the young master of the Earthsea sect that had tried to propose to you, Mo Dao." Upon hearing this, Ji Yu Yang's face instantly changed a little. Immediately after, she replied in anger, "How could they invite that fellow? Although that fellow is loathsome, his strength is after all at the peak of the initial profound life stage. Within the younger generation of Heaven Wind Sea region, his reputation is pretty good. I believe that the clan had no other choice. After all, it was too sudden." The grey-robed elder bitterly laughed, before shooting a look at Lin Dong's back. "You've currently invited this little brother as an external helper. If by any chance they meet, given Mo Dao's character, Mo Dao will make things difficult for him." Upon hearing this, the anger on Ji Yu Yang's face suddenly dissipated, as a trace of rarely seen craftiness flitted across her clear and cold eyes, before she muttered, "There's no need to care about him. As for making things difficult, when the time comes, we'll find out exactly who will be making things difficult for who. I hope that fellow will not cause trouble. If not, when he humiliates himself, there will be no one else to blame." After hearing her words, the grey-robed elder was stunned. Never would he have thought that Ji Yu Yang would actually have such confidence in Lin Dong. However, there was no longer anything to say, and he could only nod his head. After which, he withdrew and started to shout orders. Under his shouting, the gigantic scarlet-red ship started to raise its sails. Facing the dark red sunset, it rapidly sped across the sea. Waves swelled and surged on the vast and endless sea. Gigantic waves surged over from far away, before finally crashing heavily onto the side of the ship, creating ear-splitting rumbling noises. Lin Dong stood at the bow of the ship, and looked towards the endless horizon. The sea winds blew into his face, bringing along the salty smell of the sea. The vastness of the sea truly made one feel refreshed. It had been several days since they left mysterious Spirit Island. In this time, they had journeyed without stopping or resting, and had experienced some dreadful and bizarre weather. The strength of nature made Lin Dong understand the terror of chaotic demon sea. However, it was fortunate that the members of the Ji clan had ample experience, therefore, these things did not impede them at all. The place we're heading to is called Martial Gathering Island, and it is also where the Chaotic Tower is located. It is guarded by experts and a large amount of troops from the 5 great clans. It only opens at the start of the Martial Gathering every year. During this period, countless experts will gather. After all, this Martial Gathering is a pretty big event. Beside Lin Dong, Ji Yu Yang was explaining the details of the Martial Gathering. Generally speaking, the Martial Gathering is considered as an exchange of pointers between the younger generation. Therefore, the invited external helper has to be part of the younger generation. As such, the external helper invited by the various clans will most likely be the young experts who have some reputation in the Heaven Wind Sea region. I'm afraid that I will be an exception, Lin Dong said with a smile. He did not have any reputation in the Heaven Wind Sea region, and was a completely unknown younger generation. You might gain one after the Martial Gathering. Ji Yu Yang smiled and replied. She clearly understood Lin Dong's strength. When he was at the 9 Yuan Nirvana stage, he was already able to deal with an initial divine symbol master as well as an initial profound life stage demonic beast expert. Furthermore, Lin Dong's strength had now soared, and officially entered the realm of the initial profound life stage. Although he had yet to completely stabilize at this stage, who could deny his battle power? According to Ji Yu Yang's estimate, if Lin Dong was to fully unleash his strength, it would be difficult to find an opponent at the initial profound life stage that could contend against him. Lin Dong did not comment and continued to ask, "Are there any problematic individuals in the other 4 clans?" The strength of the other 4 clans is pretty good. They have many capable individuals amongst the younger generation. For example, the most famous one in the Wei clan is Wei Zhen. His strength has long reached the peak of the initial profound life stage. It is said that he will likely advance to the advanced profound life stage within 2 years. Ji Yu Yang replied with a slightly solemn face. "Oh." Surprise flashed past Lin Dong's eyes, before he secretly nodded his head. The chaotic demon sea was undoubtedly worthy of its reputation. To think that there were such talents amongst the younger generation here. Peak of the initial profound life stage. With such power, one would already be considered a true expert in the Eastern Xian region. As for the other 2 great clans, Su Yang of the Su clan and Song Chen of the Song clan are at the same level and are rather hard to deal with. What about the Shintu clan? Lin Dong asked about the final clan that Ji Yu Yang had yet to talk about. The Shintu clan. Ji Yu Yang's face turned a little unnatural when this clan was mentioned. After bitterly laughing for a while, she continued explaining, "The Shintu clan is the strongest among the 5 great clans. They were the champions of the martial gathering last year. Among the younger generation of the Shintu clan, the most formidable is Iron Azura Shintu Ju. Within the Heaven Wind Sea region, there's no one that has not heard about his name." Iron Azura Shintu Ju. Lin Dong's eyes faintly narrowed. As the saying goes, no one would become famous for no reason. Since this person was able to achieve such a name for himself in the Heaven Wind Sea region, he would definitely be very capable. That fellow might have already reached the realm of the advanced profound life stage. In addition, he has similarly trained his physical body with the Shinto clan's Azura body, which he had already achieved a high level of proficiency in. Recently, it was heard that Shinto Ju had crossed hands with an advanced profound life stage expert, and had even defeated his opponent, Ji Yu Yang explained while shaking her head. Her tone was filled with helplessness. "Formidable." Lin Dong nodded his head. Looks like this Shinto Ju was indeed a fierce individual. Within the Heavenly Wind region there are busybodies that made a ranking for the younger generation. This Shinto Ju is firmly ranked at the 3rd position. Ji Yu Yang said. Shinto Ju is only 3rd. Lin Dong was stunned for a moment, his emotions faintly stirring. He had assumed that Shinto Ju was strong enough to already be called to strongest within the younger generation of the Heaven Wind Sea region. Yes. Ji Yu Yang replied while nodding her head, before continuing, "The first rank is Yin Yang Han Ju Gan of the Universe Cave, while the second is Little Underworld King Xie Yang of the Demonic Wind Cave. These 2 are pinnacle existences amongst the younger generation of Heaven Wind Sea region." Lin Dong noiselessly mouthed the 2 names, before lamenting a little. The quality of the younger generation in Chaotic Demon Sea was indeed a level higher than the Eastern Xian region. Naturally, Shinto Ju is not much weaker than the 2. After all, they have never crossed hands before, so no one really knows. Ji Yu Yang said. As for the martial gathering this time, due to being the previous champion, the Shinto clan does not need to participate. They only need to defend the tower. Defend the tower? Yes. Of the 4 participating great clans, only one clan will walk till the very end and challenge the Shinto clan. If they win, they'll obtain the 3 quotas to enter the Chaotic Tower. If they lose, the Shinto clan will remain the champion. This is similar to the arena, being the champion really has quite a few advantages. Lin Dong said while sighing. The Shinto clan did not need to participate in the initial intense competition, and could wait for their exhausted enemy to arrive. This was indeed a rather huge advantage. That's the favored treatment of the champion, as stated by the rules. Ji Yu Yang also felt some helplessness in response to this, however, there was nothing that could be done. Softly sighing, she said, Shinto Ju would definitely be present to defend the tower this time. He's the true obstacle to overcome. Of the 4 great clans, no one is certain of being able to get past him. These were not words Ji Yu Yang had said to devalue Lin Dong. Although she clearly understood that Lin Dong was similarly pretty powerful. Shen Tuju's reputation was after all too resounding. His various combat achievements have made people of the same generation feel inferior. Therefore, Ji Yu Yang did not have much confidence in becoming the champion this year. Lin Dong smiled but did not say anything more. He did not have the desire of competing in viciousness with other people. If not for the mysterious stone talisman, he would not have even gotten involved in the 5 clans martial gathering. However, things were not to be. Since he had obtained an opportunity to repair the stone talisman, he would naturally not give it up. Therefore, the quota to enter the chaotic tower will be his. If there were people blocking him, then he only had to defeat them. Lin Dong's arms hung at his side as he stared at the distant surface of the sea. Black clouds were converging once again, as a thunderstorm slowly took shape. After sailing for approximately 10 days, Lin Dong clearly felt the surrounding sea suddenly become bustling with activity. Giant ships came whizzing along from all directions, before finally converging to their front. The appearance of 10,000 ships gathering was a rather spectacular sight. "We've reached Martial Gathering Island," Ji Yu Yang said. Standing at the bow of the ship, she looked at the vast land that had appeared at the end of her sights, as joy flitted across her eyes. Lin Dong raised his head and looked over, and what he saw as an extremely vast land. The surface of the so-called island was abnormally huge. Even though the number of ships on the sea were akin to clouds in the sky, there was not the slightest bit of congestion. "That's a ship of the Ji Yu clan. Is that Ji Yu Yang of the Ji Yu clan at the bow? Heh, she indeed is a cold-faced beauty. It's said that Ji Yu Yuntian was beaten and suffered serious injuries a while ago. Looks like he can't participate in this martial gathering. Ji Yu Yuntian is unable to participate? Things might not bode well for the Ji Yu clan this time." True. As Ji Yu Yang's ship neared Martial Gathering Island, quite a number of gazes shot over from the surroundings. Upon seeing the Ji Yu character on the ship's sail, they could not help but break out into whispers. When Ji Yu Yang heard those voices, her umber black brows faintly scrunched up. Soon after, she waved her jade-like hand, and the ship rapidly headed for the personal harbor of their Ji Yu clan. There were already quite a few Ji Yu clan guards quietly waiting there. "Lin Dong, let's go." As the ship gradually neared its destination, Ji Yu Yang turned her head and spoke to Lin Dong. Her beautiful body moved as she took the lead, shooting forward before finally landing on the distant harbor. Beside her, Lin Dong, as well as Ji Yu Ying, Ji Yu Ya, and the other Ji Yu clan disciples also rapidly followed. "Elder Sis Ji Yu Yang, you've finally arrived." As Ji Yu Yang landed from the air, several nearby Ji Yu clan disciples started to crowd around her. From the looks of it, Ji Yu Yang had some status amongst the younger generation of the Ji Yu clan. Ji Yu Yang nodded her head towards the Ji Yu clan disciples. Her eyes proceeded to turn towards a middle-aged man who was walking over. With a soft voice, she said, "Uncle Ji Yu Ling." Behind this middle-aged man was a rather handsome-looking man. Currently, he was staring at Ji Yu Yang with some passion. The latter, however, directly ignored his gaze. "Ha ha, it's good that you've made it," the middle-aged man known to Ji Yu Yang as Uncle Ji Yu Ling nodded his head with a smile. His gaze swept across Ji Yu Yang's body, before exclaiming with some happiness, "You've had a breakthrough." "Yes. I obtained a life mysterious spirit fruit at Mysterious Spirit Island. With its power, I managed to advance to the profound life stage." Ji Yu Yang replied while nodding her head. "This is truly timely." Happiness appeared on Ji Yu Ling's face. He proceeded to take a half-step back, as he pointed to the handsome man and said with a smile, "Little Yang, this is Mo Dao. You should know him. He is the external helper our Ji Yu clan has invited over this time. Miss Ji Yu Yang, we meet again," the man said in a rather elegantly manner while sending a faint smile at Ji Yu Yang. Ji Yu Yang shot an indifferent look at Mo Dao, before moving to the side, revealing Lin Dong behind her. Her slender jade-like finger pointed at him, as she looked at Ji Yu Ling. Uncle Ji Yu Ling, this is the external helper I've invited over this time, Lin Dong. As Ji Yu Yang's words rang out, Ji Yu Ling as well as the surrounding Ji Yu clan disciples were instantly taken aback. Their faces turned slightly strange as they looked towards Mo Dao, whose smile had started to recede. Lin Dong felt a headache due to the suddenly strange atmosphere. However, before he could speak, he felt Mo Dao's eyes turn towards him, as a smile that was not a smile appeared on that handsome face. A person that has just stepped into the profound life stage, and hasn't even stabilized his aura, was actually invited as an external helper. Miss Ji Yu Yang, aren't you being a little too childish? Mo Dao's voice softly echoed, causing the atmosphere to freeze a little. The surrounding Ji Yu clan disciples looked somewhat helplessly at this scene. It was likely that they were already used to Mo Dao's clear manner of mockery. In addition, when Mo Dao's words echoed, their gazes started to size up Lin Dong. The latter's aura was pretty strong, however, there was some disparity when compared with Mo Dao, who was at the peak of initial profound life stage. In addition, when all was said and done, Mo Dao had some reputation amongst the younger generation of the Heaven Wind Sea region. As for Lin Dong, no one knew him. Who knew where Ji Yu Yang had invited him from? Could such a person truly substitute for Ji Yu Yunqian? Cough. Upon seeing this, Ji Yu Ling gave a dry cough. He looked at Lin Dong, before smile at Ji Yu Yang as he spoke. Little Yang, you should also know about what happened to Yunqian. Our Ji Yu clan's current situation is not too encouraging. Although you've broken through to the initial profound life stage, it will not change much. Mo Dao's strength speaks for itself, and has the qualifications to substitute for Yunqian. Ji Yu Ling knew that Ji Yu Yang had some dislike for Mo Dao, and therefore assumed that she had purposely found another person in an attempt to remove Mo Dao's position as an external helper. However, this concerned the Ji Yu clan's martial gathering results, therefore, he would not tolerate Ji Yu Yang's childish behavior. As for Lin Dong, he could see in a single look that he had the appearance of the initial profound life stage. Furthermore, his aura was conspicuously empty and superficial. It was likely that he had relied on some kind of natural heavenly treasure recently to reach this stage. His strength was indeed a considerable distance away from Mo Dao's. Uncle Ji Yu Ling, I'm not joking. Lin Dong is the external helper I've invited over for our Ji Yu clan. His strength is sufficient for the task. However, in response to Ji Yu Ling's words, Ji Yu Yang shook her head and replied earnestly. Oh. Hearing this, Mo Dao smiled indifferently, as his eyes swept across Lin Dong with faintly concealed contempt and despise. Speaking out, he said, Miss Ji Yu Yang, whether he has the qualifications is perhaps not something that you can decide alone. In addition, I originally didn't have much interest in your 5 clans martial gathering. If not for the genuine invitation of your Ji Yu clan, I might not have chosen to stick my hands into this matter. If Miss Ji Yu Yang truly does not want me to interfere, I'll voluntarily hand over my position to this person. Mo Dao's scheme was pretty good. He did not openly go against Ji Yu Yang, and instead used retreating to advance. As his words resounded out, the faces of the surrounding Ji Yu clan disciples started to change somewhat, and Ji Yu Ling's forehead became increasingly wrinkled. His face turned stern as he looked towards Ji Yu Yang and said, Little Yang, stop causing trouble. What's the matter? This was after all the Ji Yu clan harbor, hence there were currently some Ji Yu clan elders overseeing the operations in the vicinity. When such a large group of people started to crowd here, it was very quickly discovered by them. Immediately, 2 middle-aged men with stern faces and pretty strong auras walked over. Their gazes were directed towards the crowd, as they inquired in a deep voice. These 2 were obviously elders with a pretty high status within the Ji Yu clan. Upon seeing them, the surrounding Ji Yu clan disciples hurriedly paid their respects. Subsequently, Ji Yu Ling explained the details of the matter. After hearing Ji Yu Ling's explanation, the faces of the 2 middle-aged men clearly turned slightly ugly. Upon seeing their reactions, Mo Dao smiled faintly, folding his arms as he shot a slightly pleased gaze at Lin Dong while staying silent. Little Yang, don't cause trouble. Inviting Mo Dao, being our GU clan's external helper, was personally ordered by the elder. How can your words casually change this? One of the middle-aged men with thick brows said in a deep voice. After which, he looked at Lin Dong and said, "This friend, since you've come here, you're a guest of our GU clan. At that time you're invited to watch the competition. As for the matter about being the external helper, there's no need to mention it again." From the beginning till the end, Lin Dong had not said anything. He only watched the matters unfurl as a bystander. His silence, however, made everyone increasingly disregard him. Uncle Gu Hua, since little Yang has already invited someone, she should have her reasons. Given her character, this should not be a short spite of temper. Why don't you listen to her explanation before deciding? Just as the middle-aged man's voice rang out, a gentle female voice suddenly rang out from within the crowd. The crowd immediately parted, revealing a sweet and graceful lady wearing a silk dress, who walked out slowly with light footsteps. The lady wore a silk dress which accentuated her full curves, as well as her slender waist. Her appearance was rather pure and beautiful, while her eyes were akin to peach blossoms. Her gentle personality and soft voice made one feel somewhat drunk. Elder Sister Mengqi. This lady clearly had an extremely high prestige within the younger generation of the GU clan. Upon her appearance, the surrounding GU clan disciples, and even GU Yang greeted her with some happiness. Lin Dong shot a look at this gentle and sweet-tempered beauty, however, his eyes faintly narrowed. The latter's aura was even stronger than GU Yang. In fact, it had faintly exceeded that of Mo Dao by a thread. This GU clan was undoubtedly one of the 5 great clans. Mengqi. Upon seeing this lady and hearing her words, Gu Ling and the other 2 slightly nodded their heads. They proceeded to look at Gu Yang, waiting for her so-called reasonable explanation. Lin Dong has indeed recently reached the profound life stage in the past month. When Gu Yang said these words, a mocking arc appeared from the corners of Mo Dao's mouth. However, before the arc grew even wider, Gu Yang's subsequent words caused it to freeze in its place. However, before his breakthrough, an initial divine symbol master as well as an initial profound life stage demonic beast expert had suffered defeat at his hands. Whoosh! The moment Gu Yang's statement was complete, commotion broke out in the surroundings. Several GU clan disciples stared in astonishment at the differential Lin Dong, who had yet to speak a single word. Only now did they know that this quiet youth was actually an Azura that had concealed his anger and fury. Oh! Astonishment appeared on the faces of Gu Ling and the other 2 as well as the lady named Mengqi, as they stared at Lin Dong in a strange manner. Never would they have thought that the latter would actually have such combat accomplishments. Ha ha, such combat accomplishments is pretty good. The frozen arc on the corners of Mo Dao's mouth slowly dissipated. Soon after, he stared at Lin Dong with some gloominess in his eye, before he laughed and said, "However, just this alone does not give him the qualifications to hand over my position. An initial divine symbol master as well as an initial profound life stage demonic beast expert. Mo Dao could also achieve such combat accomplishments, albeit after some trouble. Therefore, although he was astonished, it was still impossible for him to voluntarily give up his position." Gu Ling and the other 2 faintly nodded their heads. If what Gu Yang said was true, that only meant that Lin Dong possessed a strength that was comparable to Mo Dao. However, it did not mean that he could pressure Mo Dao to offer up his position on his own accord. So what do I need to do to obtain this qualification? A smile finally surfaced on Lin Dong's face, as he stared at Mo Dao and asked. Mo Dao smiled as he gazed at Lin Dong, however, chilling intent was more or less present in his smile. Soon after, he massaged his wrist as he replied, "Good. I'm someone who always follows the rules. In this place, strength is king. If you defeat me, you will have the qualifications. If you're inferior to me, I believe." When his words reached this point, Mo Dao sent a smile towards Lin Dong. Quickly after, his face instantly turned ice cold as he continued, "You should quickly scram, and stop delaying me from my proper business." From the looks of it, Mo Dao had some dislike for Lin Dong. He had an abnormal adoration of Gu Yang. Hence, unhappiness had arisen in his heart after seeing that Yu Yang had actually refuted him for Lin Dong. If you truly have the capability, challenge me. There will only be two outcomes. You scram, or I scram. Upon hearing Mo Dao's icy words, the surrounding Yu clan disciples secretly grinned. As they thought, the former had been infuriated. A twitch ran past the faces of Yu Ling and the other two as well as Yu Mengqi. However, they did not say anything else. They were actually not very concerned about whoever becomes the external helper. As long as the external helper possessed genuine strength, his identity was of no concern. Gaze after gaze turned towards Lin Dong. At this time, Mo Dao had already said his most vicious words. If Lin Dong did not dare to accept, the only thing he could truly do was to leave by himself. Under the attention of those gazes, Lin Dong smiled and walked forward. He looked straight at Mo Dao, as laughter rang out from his throat. Since you're certain about this, then it's better for you to scram. As the last word rang out, the smile on Lin Dong's face abruptly disappeared. The instantaneous eruption of chilling and vicious intent made even Yu Ling and the rest narrow their eyes for an instant. This video will end here.